Big press day, I could imagine, talking about the new record. It's how many interviews in are we today?
You're number two, so I'm still a little
Yeah,
fresh, but
there
I'm
you
still
go.
trying to pull the cobwebs off my brain at this
That's
point.
okay. My face doesn't start moving until around 11 my time, so we're just
All right,
past that. So there you go.
great.
So the new record, Pawns and Kings, it's coming out on October 14th. Man, tell me about the prep for this. Obviously, a big moment for the group.
Yeah, it's just record number seven. Hard to believe.
Insane.
Nearly, geez, I mean, we'll be 20 years here pretty soon. So yeah, no, it's good. For me, it's more just a kind of a testament to the realization of I guess the longevity of the band. It's amazing that four knuckleheads could stay together this long and still make music together. So yeah, it's good. It's been very nice to be back in the saddle with these guys again.
Is that something you could have anticipated? I mean, maybe going back to the beginning of the group, was longevity even a factor in your mind, or was it just we're doing what we're doing now until the wheels fall off type of vibe?
Yeah, I'm kind of a funny bird because I'm always expecting things to end. I'm a bit of a, especially with the music business, because the
Right.
music, I was always told, that was just a far-fetched dream.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, we get to make a record together. Great. I had no idea that there would be this kind of legacy,
Yeah.
just because I knew the nature of the business. The odds of
Yeah.
being successful are slim to none. So I've been pleasantly surprised.
Was that something that was often said around you? Because I mean, obviously a family can be very loving and supportive, but they also want to protect you. So, like, was it mostly that you were hearing maybe you should look at other options? This probably won't work at the level it ended up working. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I was always kind of taught to have realistic expectations. I remember being in the car, and when I was really young, you're like 10 years old and you're like, oh, I want to, be a sports guy. I want to play baseball. Or your
right.
parents are, well, son, you should have realistic expectations. Maybe you should try and be a photographer for the sports team.
Right,
That was
exactly.
the
One of
kind
the
of
guys on the
conversation.
side.
That is exactly what I was kind of not beating into my head, but it was presented that maybe you
Yeah.
should consider that. Now they also knew I was a pretty small kid, so
Mm.
that a lot of those delusions of grandeur as a sports guy was not going to
Maybe an
happen.
astronaut or something would have been more up the alley. That, at least for me, it was.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, I would have taken that. I would love to be an astronaut.
Pretty cool.
But yeah, right. But I think that yeah, the because it was always that laid out for me to be realistic.
Mhm.
The idea of being a recording artist was definitely didn't fit in that realm. So I've been very surprised with how life has turned out. But I think I was telling somebody this earlier. I think I was just too dumb to know when to quit. Really, I just
Mm.
couldn't imagine doing anything else.
That's
Anytime
part of it, though, for any creative.
absolutely,
You know what I
absolutely,
mean? I mean,
yeah.
that's fascinating to me. So, how exactly did a young Miles combat that when you made the choice? Okay, I want this to be my business. Was it a factor of tuning people out, or was there a convincing people around you element?
Well, there's a big convincing me. That was the big
Okay.
issues. I loved it. Look, I was just when I started playing guitar, it was like I found my special purpose.
Right.
It
100%.
was like I just loved it. I was obsessed with it, and still am. But I also because of all those the kind of the confines of realism
Mhm.
and being told, well, it's going to be this, it's probably going to be this way. It was hard to break out of that psychology and
Yeah.
accept the fact that this thing that I loved, that I could perhaps really try and do something with it and
Right.
express myself through that. And okay, I don't want to make it sound like my parents weren't supportive because they were extremely supportive. In fact,
Right.
frankly, I wouldn't be playing music if it wasn't for my mom because she's the person who kind of nudged me to start playing trumpet when I was 9 or 10
Okay.
years old. So that's been wonderful. But I think just the idea of especially where I live in Spokane, Washington, and
Mm.
other than like Bing Crosby,
Right.
that we're not really known as being a music mecca. But yeah, I was too dumb to know when to quit, and I loved it.
I think that's incredible, and it's about that working through. Who, maybe let's take it back. When was the first time you met Mark Tremonti?
We met briefly in 1998 in a
Okay.
like a cafeteria in at the I don't know, some venue in Las Vegas where we were playing with Creed way back in the day, my band, the Mayfield Four, and it was a quick fist bump.
Okay,
That was
just
it.
very
Hey
quick in
man,
passing.
boom, and that was it. And then he called me 6 years later, 4 years later, or whatever, or 5 years later, whatever it was. Horrible math.
So you guys have been sort of like crossing paths for a while.
A little bit, yeah. We were in the scene, and apparently, they when they wanted to put another project together, I was pretty surprised to receive the call to put it out because we weren't buzzing each other up on a regular basis or anything,
Right.
you know.
And what exactly did he say? He just asked you if you wanted to work?
Yeah, he just asked if I'd be interested in doing something, and so he sent me some demos, like 3 or 4 songs that he had been working on, and I thought they sounded great, and I sent him back with my vocals, and the rest is history. Yeah.
How does a working relationship like that change after so many years, or I guess maybe evolve after so many years?
You learn. I think there's a level of trust creatively that starts to evolve.
Right.
You start to you start to understand the creative dynamic and how to best utilize that for the function of the band. And yeah, and that's something that just develops over time. It was very different early on. Like when I first started playing with these guys, I was very hesitant to present ideas and whatnot because I knew that they already there was the nucleus at that point. So in that very first record, it was a very different dynamic. And then by Blackbird, it started to we started to become a band. It was like,
Yeah.
we toured enough and spent enough time together. And then it started to happen at that point.
So it was a very natural thing, it sounds like. Because again, I mean, does it help you not to be thinking too much about what's going to end up happening or where this is going to go and just staying in the moment? Because it sounds like that's been sort of an approach throughout your career.
I'm look, it's something. Staying present is something I'm really focused on at this point in my life. I wish I'd have done it more back then, to be totally honest with you, because I always was a bit of a worrywart and a bit, kind of forward thinking, not in a good way. But I think that because of how our personalities are, we're all 4 of us are really laid back. There's no real massive personality in this band, and I think that's part of how it worked because we're all
Right.
kind of hardwired on a kind of this.
Right. You're all part of the same unit, that same frequency.
Yeah, exactly. That's a much better way of frequency as opposed to going bah.
I got it though. I picked up on it.
Good.
That's perfect. So, I mean, how often have you guys got out to perform so far, sort of since shows have been back? Have you done much solo wise or what's that been like?
Yeah, I did. Let's see. I did a solo run in the UK last year, and then I did another solo run in the UK and Europe for this festivals in June, and then did a US with Slash and the Conspirators February, March of this year. So yeah, I've toured a fair amount, not as much as I would have liked, but we're about to put that to the test here in about 3 weeks when we head out and out to Europe with Alter Bridge and Hailstorm and Mammoth. So.
What does the prep look like for you, sort of weeks out from a tour? Let's say 3.5 weeks. What are you starting to check off that list in terms of preparation?
Well, we have established what the song list will look like. And so then for me, I just sit in my studio and start rehearsing those before we all get together, and we'll start, production rehearsals and all that in about 3 weeks or whatever it is in Germany. But yeah, for me, it's really just a matter of it's muscle memory. I've got to sit there and just run the songs over and over, not just from, the guitar parts, but also just singing and playing at the same time, especially with songs like these are challenging songs in that respect. So yeah, it's just a lot of repetition, to get ready so that when you're standing on a stage in front of a bunch of people, you don't blow it.
Yeah, I mean,
Which I'm sure I'll do anyways.
no, that's simple as it gets, though. I mean, that practice, you're not going to say you just wake up and it all comes to you. One thing I think a lot of people wonder is about your voice. There's so many singers who, after 10 plus years of just belting like you do, they start to encounter issues. And I mean, I see people mostly in the comments saying your voice just continues to improve like fine wine. I mean, how do you maintain a voice like this?
Well, my mom was probably the person who wrote that, so that was just biased.
There you
Um,
go.
it's funny with the human voice. It's a finicky instrument. Sometimes it does what I want it to. Sometimes it doesn't. It feels good at the moment. But yeah, I've learned what not to do. Interestingly enough, it's it's things like sleep. Just a no brainer. Also, I have to be careful. Like with I don't really drink alcohol anymore. I love coffee, but man, that's when I might have to kick too, because it does kind of
Really?
mess with my voice. And yeah, in fact, I did an interview recently, and during the whole interview, I've been drinking. I was sipping on coffee, and I'm just like
Mm,
coughing, and I'm clearing my throat.
really?
I'm like, yeah, I
Do
just
you
kind
take
of
it with cream?
no. I'm straight
Interesting.
straight black
Okay.
coffee. Yeah, I think it's just I don't know reflux of the acidity or something. But anyways, things like that. So you learn that through the years. Way back in the day, I didn't know a lot of that. So
Hmm.
I would just go up there and sing and not understand. There are things you need to look after your body. But talking about singing, the other night I went to Iron Maiden in
Nice.
here in Spokane, and I was blown away with Bruce Dickinson. He crushed it. He sounded so good. I was just like,
Yeah.
man, if in 15 years I can, be half, have half of that power. And it was actually really inspiring. It was great to see
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Wow. You still feel inspired to this day after performing so many years when you go see a really good show. That's interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For me, it's really helpful. It helps me see that because it's like,
Mm.
okay, there's something to strive for.
Yeah. Is it weird being in the audience after, usually your perspective is reversed? Does it almost feel strange being in the opposite?
I prefer it. A lot of times people go and they'll stand side stage, and you
Yeah.
can't hear it. So I like to be out there. Fortunately, I had a friend who was the front of house engineer, so he let us stand
Nice.
kind of by him, and so you get we had the great perspective and could see the whole
Yeah.
production and hear everything the way he heard it, and so yeah, it was great. It was really inspiring.
Man, that's super cool. So, I mean, in terms of the record that you guys have coming out, Pawns and Kings, interesting title. What was sort of the motivation behind this, and maybe talk about the story you guys are trying to tell?
I just love chess.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Straightforward.
I'm totally joking. No, I think Paul, it's kind of the way I'm trying to sum it up is it's a battle cry for the underdog. It's that line of "and though we're pawns, we could be kings." It's the idea that you could be more. It's a mantra of empowerment. And I think that's something that I feel like that's a timeless theme. That's something
Yeah.
humans are always going to need to be reminded of. And yeah, so it's been fun to hear people's perspective on the song. I've been a little bit vague as far as exactly what it meant as far as the narrative goes, and I do
Yeah.
that intentionally now because I don't want to tell people like if they've extracted a certain meaning from it and it resonates in their lives, then I want to
Mhm.
respect that.
You don't want
And
to
it's
tell them, "Hey, that's not what it's about."
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I feel like that
Interesting.
doesn't do a service to the song. So it's been fun hearing everybody's take on it. It's been across the board. People are like, oh, is it about some massive? I don't know. It get like almost like
Social,
tinfoil hat
political,
stuff.
like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like, and it's like, okay, that's interesting. I can see how you could get that from there, from the lyric. But yeah, it's been nice to see that it's inspired conversation and theories, and it's been fun.
How long did it take you guys to do the 10 tracks?
We recorded the whole album. It usually takes us about 6 weeks. That's about the
Wow.
amount of time we set aside. Mark and I started writing. I mean, I know I started writing for it back in December. So I feel like I don't know how a lot of his ideas are, but I know that mine are kind of fresh, like
Yeah, okay.
hot, fresh, baked out of the oven. I've said a few times now.
And he's
Um,
got a collection that sort of spans, it could be years, it could be months.
yeah, exactly,
Interesting.
exactly.
Wow, that's going to be really cool. I mean, for people to hear the full record is going to be really impressive. Just before we wrap up, you guys are headed on tour pretty soon. We've been seeing a lot of stuff in the rock news, pretty much at the forefront, having to do with the presence of tracks in live performances, and even with some artists, maybe the lack thereof of backing tracks. I'm just curious, how do you feel about this topic when it comes to live rock shows? Do you feel that there's any place for recorded tracks in a live show, or does that take away from the performance?
I think it depends on the degree to which you're utilizing it. At least for me, we wouldn't look the day I have to sing to track. If I mean, in terms of like not actually be singing, but lip syncing, then I'm hanging it up. I'm not going to do that. So I'll never do that. Because we don't have a keyboard player, there have been a handful of songs over the years. Like we had a song called "Slip to the Void," where it was basically I remember I programmed it on GarageBand way back in the day and used that. We used that intro, so you could consider that a track. That was the this little keyboard part. So like for a 4-piece rock and roll band who doesn't have a keyboard player on stage, we would occasionally pepper something like that in the set. But other than that, we don't. There's no guitars, no bass, no drums, no vocals. None of that is being piped in. We do it. It's a live thing, and once again, that's one of the things I appreciated when I was watching Iron Maiden the other night. It was like clearly these guys were all playing. It was great.
Do you think there's a distinction between older artists and younger artists doing it? Like, for example, if Maiden would have done it, would that have taken away from the show for you, or would you have not cared?
That's a great point, because it is a bit of a. I think for guys who came up when we did, there was just something you didn't consider. But because of technology now, and because now, if you're a band that it's part of your thing, you have this really dense sound and you have to utilize tracks to convey what you conveyed on record. Okay. I can understand that argument. Yeah. But I feel like for what we do, we are like, especially this last record. I mean, we intentionally went in and tried to be very cognizant of not overproducing it. So there's no point in adding all this other stuff on top of that.
No, that's a good point. People are really excited for the record. It's produced by Michael Elvis Basquet. Is there anything else you want people to know, or maybe that we can expect from the album that we may not have anticipated?
No.
I guess it's pretty straightforward.
We covered it all. Yeah, rock and roll. Keep it simple.
Man. I love it, dude. Well, listen, I'm super excited for the album, and thank you for your your time, and just keep up the continued success, man.
Thank you, brother. It's been a pleasure.